Good day. Today we will discuss on data modeling. Data modeling is a process of creating data model of data to be stored in a database. Simply, a data model is a conceptual or a visual representation of data in our database. Database can be modeled using entity relationship diagram or ERD or ER model. So it is a type of structural diagram for use in database design. Actually, there are variations of ER diagrams, or there are various ways to represent ER diagrams. So some use symbols like oval or ellipse, and other use boxes. So an ER diagram or an ERD has component. It has an entity, attributes, and relationship. What is an entity? An entity is a real-world object that is represented in a database. It can be any object that exists, or it could be a place, a person, or a class. So an entity is anything that is distinguishable. That is something that is, or it is something that can be seen, or something that can be touched, or any item about which data should be captured and stored. Example of entities is we have a person entity, or a building, a student, a teacher, a school. A department is an entity. So department cannot be touched, but then it exists. So it is an entity. While an attribute is a property or characteristics of an entity. When we say attribute, simply what defines an entity. So example of entity is we have a person, or rather an example of attribute. For example, a person entity. What are its attributes? So a person can have a name, an address, a gender, a home number. So those are attributes. Another example here is we have attribute employee number of entity employee, the weight of an automobile, address, date. So those are attributes. Another example is we have the entity student. So its attributes are student ID. A student can have last name, a first name, a middle initial, an address, a program, or a gender. So that is attribute and entity. So entity relationship diagram representation. So how do we represent our entities and attributes in a diagram? So entity is represented with a rectangular shape, while attributes are shown below it. So kasabot, ang atong attributes na siya sa inside gihapon sa rectangular shape, pero below siya sa ato entity. So in an entity relationship diagram, for every entity, there is what we call a primary key, or in short, a P-key. So what is this primary key or P-key? It is a unique identifier of your entity. So meaning to say, what is the unique attribute of that entity? Like for example, in a student, what is unique about student? So the primary key in the attribute student is we have the student ID. So why is it the primary key? Because in one student, only one student ID can be assigned. So there is no such, or it is impossible for two students to be assigned with one student ID. So that is a unique identifier. So example, so this is how you represent, or you present your entity relationship diagram. So ibutang siya sa rectangle. So name of the entity is we have salesperson. So the attributes are below it. So the underlined is the salesperson number, which is the primary key. So the attributes aside from salesperson number is you have the name, the commission, the percentage, and the year. So this is how we represent our entity. So entity in the real world never really stand alone. So they are typically associated with one another, known as relationship. No one is an island. So it needs relationship. So just like entity, dili siya mo stand ng siya lang. So it needs another entity. So example of relationship is we have parents. So parents are associated with their children. Automobile parts are associated with a finished automobile in which they are installed. Firefighters are associated with the fire engine to which they are assigned. Teachers are associated with students. Kung eskwela ka, mahal mo ka ng teacher. Kung teacher sa ka, magtulog ka, you need a student. So there is a relationship. School and student. So there is a relationship. Student entity and school entity. So what is their relationship? So there is no school kung walay student. So mag-need ng student and school. So that is their relationship. So dili sa maka-eskwela ang student kung wala pod siya school. So there should be an established relationship between entities. So the most basic way of categorizing a relationship is by the number of entity types involved. So we have this unary relationship, binary relationship, and ternary relationship. There is also what we call cardinality. So to the maximum number or the maximum number of entities that can be involved in a particular relationship. So this is categorized into one-to-many, one-to-one, and many-to-many. So as to symbols, one is represented using bar sign or bar symbol, then many is represented using cross-foot symbol. Then we have also modality, so the minimum number of entity occurrences that can be involved in a relationship. So it could be categorized into 0 or 1. So it is illustrated 0, so 0 number, and 1 for bar. So we will discuss that in the succeeding example. So first is we have the unary relationship. So a unary relationship is associated or the associate occurrences of an entity type with other occurrences of the same entity type. So pasabot, ang unary relationship, ang imong entity is related siya sa same entity ra pod niya. Like for example, person entity. So a person may be married to another person. Kung tapakas lang ng tao, tao lang pod. So naay relationship ang tao sa kawalingon na tao. So that is an example of unary relationship. So another example is one person may be a parent of another person or another people. So conversely, a person may be have another person as one of their parents. So pwede po siya na that person could be a parent of the other person, or kana person pwede po siya mahimo na parent. So same entity type lang siya pero naa sila'y relationship. So to illustrate such relationships, we have here person entity. So we define the attributes of this entity. So we have ID number, first name, last name, address, and gender. So this person entity is associated with another entity which is person. So meaning this person is in relationship with the same entity person. So what is their relationship or what is their association? So that person marries the other person, or that person is married to the other person. So that is represented using the line, this line. So So, ang relationship ng entity is i-establish siya using a line symbol. So, this one. Kaya siya na line ang muna ang nagpasabot na naa sila'y relationship. So, or naa sila'y association. So, their relationship is marries or is married to. So, in this relationship, we will see the cardinality and modality of our entities. So, we have here sa outer niya na part, sa outer this one and this one. So, that is the cardinality, while sa inner, ang iyang modality. So, again, when you say cardinality, the maximum degree or the maximum number of their association, and modality is the minimum number of their association or sa ilang occurrence or ng ilang existence. So, for example, that person is married to another person. So, cardinality nila is 1. 1 to 1. So, anong 1 to 1 man? So, mean to say, a person is marries another person or marries a person. So, this person can only be married to one person ng jud. So, if we are to follow, or let us say, technically, if we are to abide law, kung na may exception, so lahat to siya. So, sa ato tahay ni Bawan, isa lang jud ang imong pakaslan. So, amo na siya na nahimo na 1 to 1 ang iyang relationship. Then, kung ato siya i-reverse, this person was married to this person, sab. So, kung magbasa kita ng relationship, or if we have to read an association or ang relationship between entities, so, dapat ang pagka-read sa ija is pwede po nato siya ma-converse or i-reverse. Like, for example, this, let us say, Jose marries Ana. Kung i-converse nato siya or i-reverse nato siya, it could be Ana was married to Jose. So, or she writes poem, or the poem was written by her. So, ingan akot ang relationship. So, i-read po siya in opposite way form siya, or in a converse way, or in a reverse way. So, just like this one, this person marries a person. So, ang iyang relationship sa this person is kanina person ma-marry siya or can marry this person. So, ang ilang relationship is 1 to 1 siya. Kasi siya, isa ra gayud ang iyang pakaslan. Ganito siya, isa ra po ang iyang pakaslan. So, married 1 to 1 ang ilang relationship. So, that is why we use the bar symbol. So, kani siya 1 and 1. The other symbol is we have modality. So, ang minimum. So, if you are to marry a person, if you are to be married, so, pila man ang, at least pila may imong pakaslan. So, amo pala niya iyang pasabot. So, that person can be married to at least one person ng jud. Diba? So, amo na siya na 1 po ang ato tagbutang diri 1 and 1. So, kanina person ini, kani siya na person, ang maximum, or not maximum, the minimum na iya mapakaslan is 1 ra diri. So, that is why 1 siya. Then, kani po the person, ang maximum, the minimum na iya mapakaslan is isa ra pod. Dili man siguro ka matawag na married kung wala imong napakaslan. So, nga na bali ang pasabot. Technically, you are not called married if wala ka magpakasal. So, dili siya pwede mahimo na 0 ang iyang value diri. So, that is why ang ilang modality is 1 and 1. So, ang minimum dapat na mapakaslan niya is 1. then the maximum po niya na mapakaslan is 1. Pero this example is tag-refer nato siya sa, for example, sa unsa ni siya lang, kasi sa Catholic na or sa Christian na something na beliefs. So, amo bali na ang iyang pasabot. Second example is we have unary. Unary gyapon siya, pero ang atong entity is employee. So, this is an example of unary. So, an employee can manage another employee. So, pareha lang man sila attributes. So, pwede siya i-establish in one entity in one entity. So, we have one entity representation lang. So, employee na to na entity. So, these are its attributes. So, ang iyang relationship is manages. So, an employee manages another employee. So, ang iyang cardinality diri is many or one to many. Ang iyang modality is 1 and 1. So, we have here, kung ato siya kuhan, an employee or employee manages employee. Kung i-converse nato siya, an employee was managed by employee. Kung sa English pa na, ang tawag niya, active and passive form. So, marami nga nakit siya. When you read a relationship, di mo po siya i-converse pagka-read sa. Kung sa iyang relationship dito, then kung sa pabalik niya na relationship. So, first is we have, anong one to many man siya. So, an employee could manage many employees, di ba? Pwede man ako na employee, daghan ang akong tag-manage na mga employees. So, that is why one to many siya. Or, kana na employee, pwede ba hamok ang manage siya? Like, for example, now na to, a supervisor. So, a supervisor could supervise many employees. But that particular employee is supervised by one supervisor lang. Or that particular employee is na-belong na siya in one month or isa lang ang iyang manager. So, that is why one to many ang ilang relationship, ang ilang cardinality rather. So, that is why. Then, ang modality niya is 1-1. So, meaning to say, so, ang employee, ang iyang ma-manage na employee is at most one employee ang iyang i-manage, and that particular employee is ma-manage niya by at most one employee sub. That is why we have here 1 and 1 ang iyang modality. So that is for unary relationship. So next type of relationship is we have binary relationship. So a binary relationship is a relationship between two entity types. So there are two entities involved in the relationship. So for example, we have here a teacher and a student, or a teacher and a subject entity. So we define the attributes of teacher. So it has teacher ID, first name, last name, and address. While subject has subject code, description, unit, and prerequisite. So, we established the relationship. So, that line, this line, ang niyang relationship. So, tagutan na to ng iyang association is teacher teaches a subject. Or in converse form, that subject was taught by the teacher. So, again, in active or in passive form siya sa English pa. So, what is their cardinality sa ilang modality? So, again, sa outside na symbol, amo na ang ilang cardinality. Sa inner, amo na ang ilang modality. So, their cardinality is many to many. So, nganong many to many man? A teacher or teacher teaches many subjects, di ba? So, pwede ang teacher hamok ang iyang subject na ma-teach. While ang subject po, so pwede hamok teachers ang mo tudlo. Like for example, CC 102 na subject. So, pwede ang CC 102 daghan ang teachers na mo handle ana na subject. So, mauna siya na many to many ang ilang cardinality. How about ang ilang modality? So, ang atong modality diri, we have 1 and 0. So, pasabot lang anak niya, ang subject should be taught by at least one teacher. So, kung atong naon, ang subject, dili siya ma-offer kung walay teacher na magtulo. So, therefore, kung mag-offer ng subject, dapat at least na-adjoy teacher na magtulo. So, unsa may iyang minimum dapat. So, at least na ay one na teacher na mo handle sa kanang subject. So, that is why we have here 1. So, dapat na isa ka teacher na mo handle sa subject. So, amo na ang iyang modality. So, while here, so ang teacher teaches subject. So, pila may minimum na matudlo ng teacher na subject. So, tagbutang na to diri 0. So, pwede man ang teacher walay iyang i-handle na subject. So, di ba there are cases na pwede dili hatagan ang teacher ng subject? So, that is why ang iyang minimum is 0. Kaya pwede ang teacher walay iyang subject na handulan. So, ang minimum niya is 0 diri na kabutang. So, amo na ang iyang modality. So, another example is we have here the author and the books. We have here the author and the books. Another example of binary relationship. So their relationship down line. So we write that their relationship is an author writes a book, or in reverse or in converse form. So the books were written by an author or by the authors. So, ato i-identify ang ilang cardinality. So, dari, many to many ang ilang cardinality. So, nganong many to many? Ang author can write many books. Then, a particular book can be written by multiple authors. Di ba kaya na ay mga libro na daghan author sa kana na book. So, that is why many to many ang ilang relationship. How about their modality? So, ang atong modality, ang author writes sa book niya 0. So, manong 0 man, ma'am? Na-author man siya. Di ba pwede man na ang author, wala pa siya na sulat na libro, or wala pa siya na publish na libro. So, it could be on process pa ang writing ng iyang book. Pero, matawag na siya na author. So, that is why pwede na ang author, wala pa siya yung libro. So, minimum diri niya is 0. Well, here, a book was written by at least one author. So, ang particular book na siya author. So, ang minimum niya na author is at least na siya one author. So, amo na ang iyang cardinality sa non-modality. Next relationship is we have ternary relationship. So, it is a relationship between three entities. So, we have example here. Entity, prescription, patient, and drugs. So, we define the attributes. Like for prescription, we have prescription ID, the date, the drug code, the physician, and the patient ID. For drugs, we have drug code and the description. Then for patient, we have patient ID, name, and telephone number. So first is we have for prescription and patient. So what is their cardinality and modality? So dyan to establish na ito ang yung relationship. So patient has a prescription or that particular prescription was written for a patient. So when we say prescription, for something resita, sulatan, form where drugs will be written, something like that. So their relationship, so ang ilang cardinality ng patients na prescription is we have one to many. So meaning a patient could have many prescriptions. And that particular prescription can only be assigned to one patient. Then for their modality, so patient can have at least one prescription. Then that particular prescription, okay, since namin yung prescription ID, so kana ng prescription ID can be assigned to one patient lang dyan. So amo dyan ang iyang modality, isang cardinality between prescription and patient. How about for prescription and drugs? So a particular prescription or a prescription contains drugs. So, ang ilang cardinality is many to many. It could be that a prescription contains many drugs. So, pwede man, kung mag-visita like for example, sa prescription niya, daghan ang iyang tag-recommend na drugs or daghan drugs ang dito tag-sulat. So, that is why many to many. Or kana na particular drugs could be prescribed to or could be written in multiple prescriptions. So that is why many to many ang ilang relationship in cardinality. We have example here. So we have the event scenario. So we are to create an entity relationship diagram. So a company wants to set up a database to record details about its staff, projects, and departments they belong to. They intend to record the following information. For each staff, there is a staff identity number, name, job title, and salary. For each department, its name and address. For each staff, it is required that staff belongs to at most one department. For each department, may have or may not have a project. Project is managed by at least one department. Project has project code, project name. So in our problem, so first is we have to identify the entities. So sa problem, the entities mentioned are staff, department, and project. Then their attributes, so staff has a staff ID number, name, title or the job title, and the salary, while department has a name and address. Then project has project code and name or the name of the project. So all those attributes that are underlined are the primary key or the unique identifier of each entity. Next is let's define the relationship or the association among entities. So as mentioned in the problem or in the scenario, so we have here, for each staff, it is required that staff belongs to at most one department. So meaning to say, staff and department has relationship. So unsa may ilang relationship? So we have here, a particular staff belongs to a particular department. So unsa ilang cardinality and modality? So how to define? So tag-mention rin sa problem, ang staff kuno is required na mag-belong siya to at most one department. So, meaning to say, ang staff, ang maximum jud niya na department is 1 lang jud. Kailangan mo siya at most 1. So, the maximum number of department na mabilong ang staff is in 1 department lang jud siya. So, ang atong cardinality between staff and department is 1 to many. Or we have here, ang department could have many staffs na mabilong sa iya. Then that particular staff belongs to 1 department ng jud. So 1 to many ang atong relationship sa iya. While the cardinality, so we have, the modality rather, is we have 1 and 1. So ang staff, ang iyang minimum na mabilong siya in a department is 1 sub. And that particular department could have at least 1 staff. So, pwede man siya na siya isa ra ka staff. That is why ang ilang modality is 1 and 1. How about sa departments ng project? So, na-aba siya yung relationship. So, na-mention diri sa itong problem, for each department kuno may have or may not have a project. So, project is managed by at least 1 department. So, daon rin na-mention kung unsa ang ilang cardinality sa non-modality. So, ang atong relationship between sa department and project, so daon sa line, so ato tabutang lidon na ang department mo manage siya ng project. So, the project was managed by the department kung in converse form pa siya. So, unsa may lang cardinality? So, ang atong cardinality diri, we have many to many. So, anong many to many man siya? So, tag-mention diri, ang department kuno may have or may not have a projects. So, pasabot, pwede siya na ay project, pwede po siya walay project kuno. Project is managed by at least 1 department. So, ang department, many to many daw siya, kaya pwede kami siya na pwede po wala. So, it could be, wala man tag-mention na specific. So, it could be, pwede man na ang department daghan projects na ma-assign sa iya. Then, kana na project is i-manage si Janan. Nga naman sa nagutang salita, ang project is managed si Janan multiple departments. So, asa man siya, nag-mention man din ang project kuno is managed by at least 1 department. So, when we say at least 1, so minimum of 1. So, pwede ba dyan hamok ang manage sa department? Kaya diba, ang minimum at least 1 ang manage sa department. So, pwede ba dyan pa? Kaya ang iyang list is 1 man. So, that is why many ang ating tag-utang. So, ang particular project can be managed by many departments. Kaya dyan tag-mention, at least 1 department. So, minimum lang niya is 1. So, therefore, pwede siya daghan ang manage ng project. Pwede daghan na department ang manage sa EJA. How about the cardinality, the modality? So, modality nato siya is we have here 1 sa department, 0 sa project. So, ang department can manage 0 project. So, ang ilang minimum na ma-manage na project is 0. So, pwede wala siya project na ma-manage. Kaya, there is a problem tag-mention. Department may have or may not have a project. So, pwede siya na ay project, pwede wala. So, therefore, ang iyang modality is 0 siya. So, therefore, ang department, pwede wala siya i-manage na project. So, ang minimum number of projects niya is 0. While here is 1. So, ang project can be managed by at least 1 department. So, dyan tag-mention dali. So, ang minimum na ma-manage sa department is, o sa project is at least 1 department. So, dyan na, nagbutang na ito na 1 sa dyan. So, that is about entity relationship diagram. So have a good day everyone, stay safe and God bless.